More heads, more hands, more skulls for Queek. The Headtaker heads to the jungles of Itza, and he's bringing Black Furs back. The Storm Vermin Elite, the Red Guard of Clan Moors, blacked out for this battle alongside the Albino Council Guard, and they're ready to show the world that the Vermin Swarm isn't the only way to play Skaven. Never enough Doom Wheels. The Warzak to Great Green Prophets at the head of a massive wall, and the Greenskins are playing a numbers game here, ready to storm the field in a tide of conscious fungi, and they're itching for a scrap, and frankly, looking pretty dope as well. The top knots and the blue war paint is a nice combo. So, Queek Headtaker doesn't get a lot of love. He's frankly not a very good lord in land battles outside a few specific niches, but in domination, Footlords can thrive because the enemy is forced to contest the points, and that's where Dwarf Gouger and his Warp Shard armor can do its dirty work. 35 bonus versus infantry is no joke either, plus he's cheap and hard to remove and thematic for a build like this one. So, figured we'd give it a shot and see what he can do. He can definitely win some duels here, and he essentially has 101 melee attack against foot troops, so that's going to be pretty scary if Warzak gets too close, and he'll of course have some wave clear against all the foot troops on the other side. You know the Council Guard well. Long the greatest of the Skaven regiments are renowned for their unbreakable. They'll be supported here by a Warlock Engineer with Warpstone armor, which turns him into a mini Mortis engine essentially. Crack's Call, Death Frenzy, and Warp Lightning, with Crack's Call getting a big-time buff for Immortal Empire, so probably a spell worth bringing now, at least in this build. And the rest of the starting army is a Doom Wheel, some Slave Rats, and Storm Vermin Sword and Board, just to help give me a foothold on those initial objectives. And for the first 5 minutes or so, we're just going to focus on trading. Not super worried about the caps, I just want to establish a value lead early that will make it easier to overwhelm the points when my counter push inevitably comes. Across the plateau, Dwarfs on a Chain lie in wait as the 8-peak Loonies anchor a flank. Death Creepers and Mogrub's Mangy Marauders for some light cav and AP range attacks. Then a swarm of Savage Orcs and Big Guns, which is a really smart way to play with Warzag, because every time he casts a spell, the Bonewood Staff is boosting their melee capabilities map-wide. Foot of Gork, Brain Bursta, Gaze of Mork, and Effigy of Dagit are his spells atop Spleen Rip of the Boar. He's a caster with a lot of utility, well suited for domination. Incredible wave clear with Foot of Gork, can pin down high-value targets with Effigy of Dagit, and Brain Bursta will clear out some of the lightly armored chaff like Clan Rats and Slave Rats. Savage Orcs are all dolled up with some blue war paint, which I think is associated with luck, maybe? We all know red goes faster, but when they're blue, da-ba-dee-da-ba-da, who knows what could happen? I feel like Greenskins are going to be pretty good in this game mode. They have a lot of good tools. When the game started, and I saw this unholy infantry swarm headed my way, first thing I wanted to do was get some wave clear on the field, right? Plagueclaw Catapult should do the trick here. Should be easy to defend on the high ground, and it has nice leadership debuffs when it lands a shot. Greenskins not known for their great LD, and on a map like Itza, it can spawn and immediately begin shooting. So it will begin its barrage and start spreading disease and decay in and amongst the Big Gun ranks. First volley was pretty underwhelming, but Big Guns have a lot of HP, so not surprising there. In the meantime, Queek and his Red Guard will move up to the center of the map and set up for the brawl. As I said, not super worried about capping points for the first 5 minutes or so. Much more worried about clearing out some of this infantry. Plagueclaw Catapult going to help a lot on that front. And Storm Vermin should trade well into the Savage Orcs and Big Guns. Now, the cool thing about domination maps is that they each kind of change how you want to approach combat, and on a map like Itza, where the spawns are pretty close together, and all 3 points are naturally contested, it makes it more difficult if you are a melee-focused faction, because you can't stay away. You can't really chill outside of artillery range while the counters are timing down to the same extent that you could on bigger maps like Arnheim or Black Ark. So, if you're forced to take an artillery pounding while contesting all 3 objectives, you may need to commit some light cav into the rear to shut that catapult down, or it's going to put a whooping on you. Doomwheel should have a field day in these opening engagements, firing Warp Lightning down the flanks of the Wa, but the melee grind should be an interesting one. Could go the Greenskins' way, buffed out by the Bonewood Staff and maybe some good Foots of Gork. But Storm Vermin are heavily outnumbered here, but they have Queek Headtaker. They're not used to being outnumbered, but Queek should be able to equalize those numbers a little bit anyway. The Doom Wheel, of course, causes terror. Greenskins have no terror on the field whatsoever. Plagueclaw Catapult will continue its Poisonous Deluge, and the Warlock Engineer charging into melee with the Big Guns, and big mistake about to take place. I thought those were Storm Vermin in the front ranks. Those are actually my Slave Rats, and so while the Warlock Engineer will certainly help out in a fight like this one and set up a pretty nice Crack's Call down the length of this Big Gun formation, the River Trolls with Big Guns will naturally beat the brakes off Slave Rats. They rout immediately. Now the Warlock Engineer is left by himself. you'd really want to have him in the middle of a bunch of Storm Vermin to get the most out of that Mortis Drain effect. And if he's fighting and completely surrounded by big guns, he's not going to last very long. So, not really how you want to use your caster. Well, it is how you want to use your caster in melee, draining over time, but just not the right unit to be fighting if he doesn't have support. And of course, there are very few targets in the game that are better for a Foot of Gork than the Council Guard. Tightly packed, high HP, unbreakable infantry that cost a lot of money, and though they aren't going to be outright deleted from the game, pretty close. So we'll get another look at the Crack's Call and the Mortis Drain effect. River Trolls pushing through. Maybe the first close-up I've ever had of them in any replay on my channel ever. I just don't showcase River Trolls very often at all. And a juicy Foot of Gork. Overcast on the Council Guard, and they're hurting after that one for sure. Though they should be able to hold out against Savage Orcs without too much issue. In the meantime, Queek Headtaker and his Storm Vermin Elite are holding the line on objective number 2. Wolf Rats are coming out of spawn alongside some Plague Monks and Clan Rats. Plague Monks are pretty good here. As long as they don't fight anything that has Fists of Gork enabled, their physical resist will allow them to out-trade the Savage Orcs pretty easily. Death Creepers and Mogro's Mangy Marauders are retreating, while more Storm Vermin engage the 8-peak Loonies over on point number 1. Doomwheel is indeed having a field day. There's nothing over here that could possibly kill it, except maybe Wurzag with a nice effigy up to get and a surround off. We haven't seen the Squig Herd come out to play. Just saw the Warlock Engineer retreat, fighting big guns by himself. Just really bad spot for him. But Squig Herd are a really good tool that I think most Greenskins players should be utilizing. They're only 300 gold now. They'd be amazing versus these Storm Vermin. They used to be 500. They're 300 gold now. Have really good stats, AP, and bonus for infantry for a price that cheap. And they can swarm the field and cap just as quickly as infantry as well. So that would be really helpful for the Greenskins in the fight so far. I don't think he has any in his reinforcing army, though. Council Guard managed to rout off the Savage Orcs, but they're hanging on with only slivers of HP, and Queek could use them because he's about to get his ass beat by a bunch of Stone Trolls. River Trolls over-pursued into the Skaven spawn, but that might be a good thing if they can get at those Plague Claw catapults, which are just reaping a terrible toll in and amongst the Greenskin line. Another flank charge from the Doomwheel. What I would consider to be a little bit of Olympus Dickus impact, but it happens, and it can still fire those Warp Lightning shots while in melee, so the terror should be imminent momentarily. Wolf Rats with Poison swarming over the point. Unbreakable 8-peak Loonies holding on for dear life against the Storm Vermin and trading pretty well there, but unlikely to outright win the engagement. And Greenskins are looking really strong on point number 2. The Thagoraki don't really have any answers to the Stone Trolls at the moment. Warp Lightning Cannons wouldn't even be able to do the trick. Only the Council Guard could, but there's only a handful of models left. It might even be worth resummoning them, but right now they are imbuing the Guardian Aura on Queek, which should help him out a lot in the coming fight against all this infantry. Now, he's fine to engage these big guns all day long. He's got 110 armor. He wouldn't die anytime soon, and if he does get surrounded, well, he can pop his Verminous Valor, let it rip with a gaseous expulsion from his little rat butt, send things flying. Probably doesn't smell too good. But the Rat Ogres have come out to play, and they're headed to point number 1 up top, and guess what? They're 100 less gold now. They went from 800 to 700, which is a pretty big deal. The fact that they can swarm the field at 700 gold alongside some Wolf Rats allows them to trade pretty well into infantry. You can get a lot more on the field than you normally be able to. Brain Burst and clearing out the Slave Rats and Clan Rats quite well. We've seen a lot of that from Wurzag this game. Gorgeous Hammer and Anvil from the Wolf Rats, and I think those Savage Orcs are pretty soon to rout after an engagement like that one. More Clan Rats swarming to the point, and we're about 5 minutes in now. So, Greenskins have a 2,500 point advantage or so, more like 2,100. So they're halfway to victory, but the Stone Trolls just routed. I'm actually surprised they got their ass beat that convincingly in that fight. I guess they just ran out of infantry support and swarmed by bodies. But this is that counterattack I was talking about. Skaven have been out-trading the Greenskins up to this point, despite some good Foots of Gork and Brain Burstas. Overall, there have been more good engagements taken on the Skaven side, but the Stone Trolls routing and a lot of the infantry breaking off as well. Skaven are surging forth with all kinds of bodies and are able to take a triple cap. And a lot of that has to do with the Plague Claw Catapult, which is fired unimpeded for this entire battle, essentially. and it has not been attacked at all. It's going to be able to fire all of its ammunition. Now, a really important facet of domination mode is that when your infantry routes off and is low HP, as soon as it rallies, you should probably think about resummoning it. What you cannot do is allow tons of stragglers to sit around the map not doing anything, because they're not going to be able to cap points when they only have 15 or 20 models and slivers of HP remaining, and you're going to start running out of bodies to make your counter push, and that can be hugely problematic as you move into the middle and late stages of the game. So all of these infantry that are routing, as soon as you get them under control, resummon them and they'll go back into the pool and you can make use of them again. Now, my Warlock Engineer did return. That was a really nice dodge from the Black Orcs. I was not expecting him to see that because, I mean, who would have thought the caster would be hanging out in the corner of the map? He was not chased off. He probably should have been, but really nicely dodged from the Black Orcs. And now with the Stone Trolls, they've got some teeth on point number 1 rather, to really start chopping up the Rat Ogres, the Clan Rats, and perhaps Storm Vermin who are coming in. But Vistron's Death Squad came out as soon as those Black Orcs hit the field. Well, the Assassins with bonus versus infantry and armor sundering, those Weeping Blades, were ready for some killing. And they're going to be a problem for all this Greenskins infantry. Big Guns will not be able to escape from them. No chance at all. And Black Orcs are currently being pinned down. Vistron's Death Squad might be able to move around the flank, get a hammer and anvil off into the Black Orcs, and think if those Stone Trolls and Black Orcs die, this might just be ended as a competition. But still, Wurzag is making his presence felt with those gorgeous Brain Burstas. Black Orcs and Stone Trolls holding the line admirably against Storm Vermin, Clan Rats, Rat Ogres, and Queek Headtaker, who's moved his way up to point number 1. Greenskins are capping faster than the Skaven at the moment, and with those wave clear spells, might be able to push through even harder. But the Warlock Engineer is returning. The prodigal Rat Son hath returned. And a Warp Lightning overcast while the Plague Claw catapults rain down from the heavens. That's brutal, dude. Black Orcs were kind of bunched up, holding the line there. And an overcast Warp Lightning is just what the doctor prescribed. Good night, sweet princes. Elite infantry for the Greenskins are dead. That's a lot of gold. Stone Trolls not going to be able to hold either. They have pretty poor leadership. Skaven have just completely inundated these objectives. And with the triple cap now, they have taken the lead at 3,100 to 2,800. And Greenskins are going to have a really difficult time taking any map control back now. Especially because they haven't quite been on top with resummoning and getting more infantry back into their pool. But the damage value is definitely skewed pretty heavily towards the Skaven now. And with that triple cap, we will probably see the end of the battle soon. Points are going to go up real quick. So, a lot of things to think about here, and I will say I have the exact same issue in many of my domination games. It's something that you have to actively train yourself to do when your units rout and when they are very low and are no longer going to be useful in terms of capturing objectives. You gotta remember to resummon them. Now, certain factions like the High Elves, when you go really elite, when you go really heavy metal, it can be quite problematic because your Swordmasters will rout with like 2 models left. They won't return, and because they're routing, you can't resummon them, and then you're left with a unit that isn't going to go back into the pool, and you start running out of bodies. Greenskins, thankfully, don't really have that issue. They have a lot of cheap, cost-effective infantry like these Savage Orcs, like these Big Uns. They can swarm the field with cheap light cav, swarm the field with Squig Herd and Orc Boys and what have you, but they're going to rout a lot, too, and they're going to die pretty quickly. River Troll is coming in now. It's such a cool looking model. God, those spikes look awesome. They're going to start vomiting, spewing over everything. Overwhelming Odor will be lowering the melee attack and melee stats of these Clan Rats and Storm Vermin. But yeah, with the Greenskins, you got to remember, same with the Skaven as well, actually, when all your chaff infantry starts breaking off, just resummon so they go back into the pool, and you can contest those objectives later on in the game. Aaron just ran out of bodies here. He literally just ran out of infantry to summon. He wasn't that behind on the value trading. He was losing on that front, but not horribly. He just didn't have enough infantry to pull from, and so now he's forced to go after his trolls, who, while good at contesting objectives, need something up front to support them, otherwise the leadership will let them down. So, really fun game. Thematic builds from both players, a Savage Orc build from Wurzag the Great Green Prophet, and a Storm Vermin build from Queek Headtaker. Queek wasn't great this game. He wasn't anything special, but he helped with the cap weight. He helped kill a lot of the infantry. Not crazy value, but he's only fighting big guns and savage orcs, so not surprising there. Obviously, a miss micro with the warlike engineer, sending him into what I thought was storm vermin, but I should have noticed when they were wavering that it was not storm vermin that early. It was definitely the slave rats, and kind of wasted my caster a bit there, but he came back and got a great warp lightning on the black orcs. But MVP was definitely the Plague Claw catapult. On that map, so good. Air needed to put a little bit more pressure on that thing because he just lost so much infantry to the disease and decay being spread by that foul abomination. Mr. Death Squad also came out and did a lot. Black Orcs did not. The Trolls were great, though. Not crazy damage value, but pretty helpful in terms of capture weight and pushing units off of a point, just being tanky. But yeah, it's hard for Greenskins in that situation to kill the Doom Wheel, and I think the only way Eric could have done so is with an effigy of Daggett and get a full surround off with Stone Trolls and just don't let them escape. Because that Doom Wheel just had so much fun that game. Again, nothing on my army had crazy value, but the Storm Vermin were able to hold the line. Even the Council Guard with their Unbreakable were able to weather the Foot of Gork, and that second counter push after he started running out of bodies was, it just proved to be too much. So, pretty thematic, pretty fun game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and lots more on the way. See you all in the next one.